Welcome back to Bolo Up. I hope you are having an amazing day. This is a continuation of the romance read, The Billionaire Cinderella Contract by Michelle Smart. So let's get into this because I just read a very small introduction page. And if you came to the first part of the read for chapter 1, Mia is actually going to an audition, and she was asked for identification from the bouncer, and it's in a place, a location where she is questioning it. So we're on page 8, and it left off at and you are Miss Caldwell. That was something else apart from the venue that she found curious about this audition. The request for her to bring identification. The mountain man examined her driver's license closely, gave a grunt, passed it back, and then stepped aside to admit her with a curt, "Follow me." She hesitated before stepping into a lobby as dingy and nondescript as the building's exterior. Mr. Man Mountain to a door at the far end. When that door opened, her eyes widened, and for a moment she stood still, taking it all in. If there was a polar opposite of the dingy, nondescript lobby, this was it. But she barely had time to soak in the richly decorated Gothic reception room when Mr. Man Mountain grunted at her to continue as she was led through another door into a wide Gothic-inspired corridor. Up a flight of hardwood stairs, they came to another corridor. Some of the doors they passed were open. Mia caught a glimpse of a casino. Then a little further on, a tantalizing peep of a bar with a grand piano. Mr. Man Mountain finally came to a stop, pushed a door open, and indicated for her to enter. She fixed the sunny smile on her face, and now came as naturally to her as breathing, and crossed the threshold. For whatever reason I cannot pronunciate today. I am so sorry. Just kind of putting that out there. This room was a fraction of the size of the others she'd passed, and contained only two dark leather sofas, separated by a small table. A man sat reading through a paper file. Their eyes met as the door closed behind her. Prickles laced her spine at the unabashed scrutiny she found in his stare. But before the prickles could be defined, he rose from his seat and strode to her. "Miss Caldwell," he clarified, extending his hand. "Damien Delgado. It's a pleasure to meet you." She held her hand out and found it gripped by the firmest handshake she'd ever been on receiving end of. "Likewise," she murmured. She rarely found herself flattered. But there was something about this man that set all her nerve endings pinging. Bing, 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 bing. He was gorgeous, as tall as Mr. Man Mountain, but half the wit. He had a muscular physique wrapped in a crisp white shirt, navy trousers, and a silver-striped tie. But it was his eyes that really captured her attention. It was like staring into melted obsidian. Thick, black hair styled in a classic crew-cut framed, a chiseled face with a broad yet defined nose and a generous mouth, all of which was enhanced by a trim black goatee beard. and he smelled amazing. Can I get you refreshment? As her throat had suddenly gone dry, she asked for a glass of water. Still or sparkling? Still. He walked to a cabinet. Please take a seat. Fearing she was in danger of swooning over his voice as well as his looks, she sat on the sofa opposite the one he'd been using. But honestly, his voice, it matched his eyes, all dark and rich, and his accent. This was a voice she would gladly have read her a bedtime story. Let us get straight to business, he said as he popped the lid of the glass bottle of water. What have you been told about why you're here? For the beat of a moment, Mia wondered what he was talking about. And then she realized she'd been on the verge of drooling over this man and pulled herself together sharply. Oh, that I'm here to audition for a role. She looked more closely at him, at the immaculate way he turned out, right down to the shoes, so buffed he can use them as mirrors. Damien Delgado did not look like any theater director she'd met before, and nor did his name mean anything to her. There is not a performing arts magazine or blog that Mia didn't subscribe to. His name should mean something. Suspicion suddenly zinging through her, she narrowed her eyes. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the production. That's because there is no production. Sorry? He placed her glass of water on the table and folded himself back on the sofa. The audition was a cover story. He inclined towards her, his scrutinizing stare unblinking, unsettling. I need an actress to accompany me for a weekend to my family home in Montclair. She drank half her water, unable to tear her gaze from his face, even while she tried to take in his words. Mia had never been to Montclair, a tiny principal sandwiched between France and Spain. And if I mispronunciate these words, I am so sorry. This is my first time reading this book, so I do apologize ahead of time. Widely regarded as the wealthiest and most glamorous countries on the planet, only the stinking rich could afford to live there. If you agree to my proposition, I am prepared to pay you £200,000 and cover all your expenses. Her mouth dropped open. So stunned was she at the astronomical figure quoted, which was 10 times the amount she'd earned over the past year. It took a few seconds, sorry, for her brain to process it. You want to pay me £200,000? He gave a sharp nod of his head. Wow. She blew a whistle. I'm sure it was really a fancy whistle, but I can't whistle. That's a lot of money. Fresh suspicions zinged to life. What would I be expected to do for it? There are aspects to be discussed after we reach agreement, but the main thing I will require is for you to act as if you were in love with me. Mia's 24 years on this earth had left her no stranger to shocks, but this was in a different league and so unexpected that it was difficult to compute what this stranger was asking her. She drained the rest of her water while trying to clear the clutter in her brain. If not for the seriousness of his expression, she would be searching the room for hidden cameras. This had to be a wind-up, or like a joke. Sorry if I seem dim, but run that by me again? You want to pay me to pretend to be your girlfriend for a weekend with your family? See. But in my world, we say partner or lover, never girlfriend. That jolted her further. Lover? The minor stupor that had numbed her brain cells vanished. Would I be expected to share a room with you while we're there? His gaze was unflinching. And a bed? My family must believe we are serious about each other. Disgust curdled swiftly in her stomach, and she rose to her feet. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. I'm an actress, not an escort. I know exactly who you are, Miss Caldwell. The way his mouth curved at the scent a frisson of ice racing up her spine. That's kind of a nice word. Frisson? It is an actress I need. I will require affection and devotion only when in the presence of others. Behind closed doors, things will be strictly platonic. She hugged her bag tightly to her stomach and inched her way backwards. I'm not sharing a bed with a stranger who's twice my size. Taking his word things will be platonic? No way. I'm not for sale. Find someone else. He shrugged sardonically and steepled along tapered fingers. I don't want someone else, Miss Caldwell. I want you. Do you know who I am? Having backed herself to the door, she wrapped her fingers around the handle and gave a brittle smile. Nope, and I don't care. Goodbye, Mr. Delgado. Before you throw away the opportunity of a lifetime, search it. Search my name. You'll find that accepting my proposition will be more than a financial advantage to you. It will give your career the turbo boost it needs to. A sudden vision of this man being wealthy backer of theater production made Mia loosen her hold on the door handle. Who was this man? Damien saw the curiosity and indecision cloud her beautiful features. Search my name, he repeated. He'd not gone to all this trouble finding the perfect candidate, only for her to dismiss it out of hand. Time was running out. In less than 3 weeks, the family business he'd spent his adult life working for, and which should already be under his control, would be taken from him, and his reputation destroyed. The business itself would likely be destroyed too. If he had any chance from stopping this I'm so sorry. So sorry. Let me go back. If he had any chance of stopping this happening. So he needed Mia's agreement, and he needed it today. He'd been certain the mention of 200,000 pounds would be enough to entice her into further discussion. Miss Caldwell, formerly known as Mia Clark, had struggled for work since graduating from drama school 3 years ago. Her main source of income was a provincial theater company touring the UK's smaller towns, her dry spells supplemented by working in a coffee shop. To say she was hungry for her big break would be an understatement. Slowly she reached into the cheapest, shabbiest handbag he'd ever seen. She pulled out a phone, then settled bright blue eyes on him. How do you spell your name? He recited it, then settled back to watch her scroll through the overload of information his name would bring. Her back pressed against the door, she read quickly, eyes flickering from the screen to him, disbelief and amazement blazing from them. For the role he required, Damien had done his homework. He'd set his lawyer to the task of compiling a short list of beautiful, hungry, London-based actresses. He didn't want to have to worry about language problems, looking for their big break, with one extra requirement added. He'd been presented with the portfolio of 4 actresses who met the criteria. With her honey blonde hair and sparkling, intelligent blue eyes, Mia Caldwell had captured his attention immediately. There was something about the look of her that would fit in the world he inhabited. To satisfy himself of her acting abilities and to have a believable first encounter, he'd attended a performance of My Fair Lady at the tiniest theater he'd ever been in, fully expecting an evening of boredom. Instead, he found himself captivated. Mia had lit up the stage and utterly convinced as a Cockney flower girl. Or a Cockney flower girl. Oh boy. She'd been funny, vulnerable, charming, and could sing like an angel. Damien had known before the interval that he found his own real-life Eliza Doolittle. And so at this point, we're leaving off on page 15, and I'll be back with another one very soon. Hopefully next time I read, I won't have that many mistakes. So I do apologize.